Transatlantic Connection Show, bringing you artisan music and musicians, the vagabonds and adventurers, building with the raw ingredients of folk music from both sides of the Atlantic. I am Chris the Bish Leiden, and this week we have part 2 of our chat with vagabonds Mark Mandeville and Raianne Richards from Massachusetts, USA. They share with us a healthy slice of optimism for the future and a beautiful new song called Honeybee. And all three of the house band, The Long Road, we chat about our self-imposed acoustic rule, and Stuart Jones from Woodworm Studios shares his insights into working with us. This is the Transatlantic Connection Show. Now, it's December when I'm recording this, so you'll forgive the festive decorations if you're watching this in July or something. This isn't a Christmas episode, it just happens to have been prepared in the run-up to Christmas. Anyway, this week's Vagabonds and Scoundrels, I'll let you decide who is who here, are Americana folk duo Mark Mandeville and Raianne Richards. This is part 2 of their chat with Steve Bonham. This chat was recorded back in the middle of October now, so both the UK and the US were still in the grips of COVID, and thoughts were always turning to, and definitely still are turning to, working out what the music world looks like beyond 2020 and into 2021. Do go back and watch the first part of the chat with Mark and Raianne, just last episode, episode 6, if you haven't seen it. They both speak so eloquently about the nature of the music they're making and the message they are trying to convey in their musical world, how they approach it, both practically and artistically, and a lovely performance of a song from their album Road May Rise. Here they are presenting an optimistic look towards the future and a performance of their song called Honeybee. Mark Mandeville and Raianne Richards in conversation with Steve Bonham.
I've asked this question 2 or 3 people so far, and it's always given a nice answer. So, from where you are now, what gives you hope?
We work with a lot of kids, I tell you, that helps me. Because when we're not on the road, and this has really been sort of a great advantage for us during this whole time, is that we teach music. So we've been through this whole thing, been able to do virtual lessons, and we're young enough to be pretty savvy with the internet still. And be able to adapt with all these new means of communicating with people. Seeing those families that we work with and talking to these kids who are very much, their lives are upside down just like our lives are upside down. And hearing their feedback, I'd much rather hear the thoughts of a 14-year-old or an 8-year-old and how they're dealing with these things than sometimes I'd like to hear from an adult with like some formed, steady opinions.
Right.
So their hopefulness has sort of helped me be okay with what's going on and know that it's going to be okay. And I know that might sound like a cliche sentiment.
No, not at all.
They're our future type of thing. I mean, they're in our future. We're all in this sort of together, whether we'd like to think about it or not. I don't want to fall into I've definitely talked to some concert promoters for folk music in particular, that they just feel like it is over. Yeah. It is done and it's never coming back. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe not your version of it, but the actual reasoning behind folk music and the reasoning behind what it does, building communities, and speaking to and helping people communicate thoughts that are harder than what can just be handled in dialogue alone. That's sort of what the whole point of poetry is to begin with. I think that's what we're going to see a resurgence of. It's going to be a real authentic second or third folk revival, where what we're doing should be maybe only for 25 people at a time, and not for filling seats and not for ticket prices. We should be okay with that, which is basically, I mean, we said this to an audience yesterday. We played to about 20 people in a huge barn with both doors open in Woodstock, Connecticut yesterday. And those 20 people really appreciated the fact that we played a concert. You know, and they got a lot out of it. And it's basically like what we were doing when we play house concerts. So now every concert's a house concert.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of gives me hope too. Like, so we've had very few opportunities to have any live performances where we're playing somewhere where there's a real live audience there. And Mark and I, for years, have kind of been slowly transitioning away from like the traditional venues and more to community spaces like museums and historic lands and barns, and we've even done concerts like in the woods on our walking tour. So we're really open to working with with places and with people who maybe don't even normally do concerts, and just kind of seeing how that goes. And we had already like kind of resigned ourselves to like, we're gonna just transition to as much of that as possible this year as we can. And then, you know, everything started getting really bad in the spring, and it was like, okay, no live shows for a while. Let's move our tour and hope for the best, right? And then this fall, the places that offered us live performances were those very places, were community oriented, non-traditional performance venues. They are what has sustained us. They are the ones that keep coming out of the woodwork to ask, how can we help you? How can we get you in front of an audience and give you a space to do what you love to do? It's not, you know, the big music venues.
It's so lovely to hear you say that, Raianne, because you know, I have a huge sense that that's happening here too. All sorts of people are talking, having conversations with people they didn't used to have conversations with, and it's almost like a parallel universe opening up.
It's good that the community is trying to nurture itself and trying to take care of each other. That's exactly what should happen when you have such a traumatic event that literally the entire world is experiencing together. Like, I can't think of anything in my lifetime, and I don't know about yours, but I can't think of anything where we've all been touched by this, no matter where you are, no matter what you do. You know, it's not just in the music community either. We've seen a lot of outreach, like for, 'cause like a lot of the elderly people that live here are very isolated right now, and people are just like figuring it out. You know, they do a drive-by in cars on their birthday, and they make signs and they wave. They have things where they can be outdoors and kind of be far apart. Like, they haven't just said, well, I can't visit my mother or my grandmother, and just kind of resign themselves to that. They've figured out a way, even if they can't touch each other, where they can see their faces. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that we need to be doing.
Yeah, that's lovely. I think we should hear another song. What you got up your sleeve here?
We're gonna do this song that I actually co-wrote with someone that we met on our tour up in Manitoba, and it's sort of an unrequited love song. She sent me the idea, I think, because it was a little too close to home for her, like a little too fresh and too painful maybe for her to write. But you know, she said, this is a great idea and I just can't write it right now, and I'm giving you the idea. And she was right. It was a great idea for a song. So it's called Honeybee.
Speak for me, right, you're all man to see. that I never thought I'd send. So I pose it as a question. Please don't answer till you know. Oh baby, can I be your honey? Nobody knows me like you do. I'd be the greatest thing this whole world has ever seen. I only want to smile with you. Be the greatest thing this whole world has ever seen. I only want to smile with you.
Raianne and Mark, thank you very much. It's been an absolute joy to listen to you, and somewhere down the road I hope our paths intersect.
Yeah,
yeah.
sounds great.
So we're going to start our house band section with the second part of a chat that Kev Moore from The Long Road had with Stuart Jones of Woodworm Studios a few weeks ago. Woodworm is where we've recorded all of our Long Road tracks. One of the great things we love about going to Woodworm is you just feel at home there. You know, whilst you've got a job to do and you don't want to waste any time faffing about, you know recording studios aren't the cheapest places to hire, but also you won't get the best music if you're rushing or panicking or freaking out. We tend to arrive pretty well prepared, knowing there will be some surprises along the way and some new ideas that appear, you know, in the moment. But Stuart manages to foster a great environment there. He knows his stuff technically, and you can just feel steady at home doing what you need to do. We sometimes joke about Stuart being the fifth member of The Long Road, but he really is a vital part of the process for us. He gets our sound, even though it's just about always evolving. He gets how we work and knows when to push, knows when to sit back a bit. Kev and Stu refer in this chat to a couple of our songs we've featured on this show in the past. Ballad of Dwayne and Billy Marie back in episode 1, and On a Bridge Across the River in episode 3. So if you want to see those videos, hear the music, just head back to those episodes, or just, you know, search for the titles on YouTube and you'll see the music videos themselves. So for now, I'm going to hand over to Kev and Stu.
We've been coming down for quite a long time now, and I suppose you've got to know how we work. But having said that, I think we've also evolved over the time. So you've seen how we've evolved. And do you find that it's easier to lock into what we're doing?
To be fair, I try and treat every session. I mean, every session you always get like those butterflies. How's it going to turn out? How are things going to go? You know, and I think with you guys, there's that confidence that we have. You know, we know how we want to get things done. We know what works for the band and for me and stuff like that. How things, you know, just the simples like getting the guide tracks down so that we can all build around those and stuff like that. You know, a band first and foremost has to be rehearsed, but after that, when they come into the studio, they need to understand how a studio works and how to lay down the tracks, whether it be as a band or, you know, doing guides and sort of building tracks.
I think we have a nice balance between, I think we allow enough room to create in the studio. I mean, we sort of know what we do. We're quite well prepared, I think, generally.
Absolutely,
That's mainly down to Chris and his little book, you know, with everything.
Yes. The sheet of lies.
Yes, indeed. But I think we leave enough room to, you know, there's quite a lot of magic that's sprinkled onto the tracks that's happened there. It's not, we haven't brought that in.
Absolutely. Things like, you know, on Bridge, where we've sort of, we went a bit nuts with the sort of like the gospel choir.
Yes.
And your drum parts as well. You know, we went for that real 70s sort of like, you know, sound and stuff like that. And again, that's something that until you're there in that situation, and
you're not going to feel it.
And then quite often the track will just take you somewhere that you never expect, or you know, you're not afraid to just go, well, let's just throw everything at it and see what sticks.
And the you know, happy accidents, those sort of things, you know.
Yes, Ballad of Dwayne as well is sort of, it's quite a departure from sort of like how you a lot of your other tracks.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we have a situation where you've got tracks which, I don't know, they just seem to have a bit more of a different soul to everything else that you've done.
Yeah,
and
I think that's because we don't always write the same way. So, for example, with Ballad, Steve had the lyrics and he just said, "Here is some lyrics," and it was just such a bizarre story.
Yes.
That my mind just went off on one with the musical ideas, and
yes,
because of my peculiar guitar playing style, I tend to layer sort of strange chords and half chords to create a thing, and then when you start sprinkling Steve's guitar and then Chris's stuff on top, it just creates that weird and wonderful tapestry of chaos. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I think we sound quite heavy. There's nothing distorted there, but considering everything we have pretty much is acoustic, with the exception of sometimes electric bass, not acoustic bass, but not always, and the Hammond and what have you. We have got a big sound, and a lot of that's down to yourself. And how do you go about making a sound that big, really?
I know this sounds cliched, but it's really down to the commitment and what the band do in front of the microphone, if you see what I mean. For your guitar style, for example, you're on the acoustic, you get a nice thick sound out of those, when you're doing your single note sort of things. And it's a nice thick sound you get. And that's the tone with your fingers and stuff like that, And again, with Steve's vocal, there's that sort of underlying sort of bass, which sort of adds a bit of gravitas. Things like using the piano as a very much more as a instead of having it as an accompaniment, almost.
Exactly.
It's very much sort of based in the bass notes and stuff like that, so it adds that weight.
And I suppose, being as the only time other than playing drums with the Long Road that I played drums was many years ago, and as a rock drummer, really, so I guess my beats are fairly heavy,
because we use I call the Dave Mattox room, the little blue sort of so you get a very close, tight sound, which gives you that much more.
I think that informs my playing, actually, when I'm in there. It's quite intense,
and you can get a nice big sound out of that room, even though it's very small. But again, you're only as good, and it's only going to sound as good as what's in front of the mic.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, it's the buck stops with you guys, I suppose. You can certainly do a broom handle job with you guys and get a good sound, rather than having to sort of really struggle and work hard on mixing it or the EQ and stuff like that. It's almost just there. It's just well, how we mix. We try and do it quite quickly, get it, get the guts of it down. And then sprinkle the fairy dust at the very end.
I like that way of working personally. Get the thing pretty much in gear and how it's meant to be, and then we start looking at the minutiae.
I am a big sort of fan of sort of getting a mix done, get it away. Maybe it can be anything for a day or two to weeks, and then revisit it and just sort of think, well, it needs this or that or something.
That's right. I mean, one or two from the last sessions have benefited from that. Sitting with them for a while, and
it's nice to get something mixed and something working quickly, and that you can sort of take away and stuff like that. But there is that sort of like advantage of having the time to just sort of like listen to it, after a couple of days or weeks or something. There's always something you go, oh, that needs that, like you re-recorded a couple of parts on one track. I think that was Bridge, wasn't it?
Yes.
Which that really nice, but at the time, because it was so busy and we're trying to get everything done and sort of capitalize on the time that we had, that you sort of miss these things, and it does take that sort of bit of time.
That's another sort of skill, isn't it? Time management, getting the best. How can we best use this time? how can you
Definitely.
best serve the song, etc., etc.
Yes.
Massive thanks to Stuart for taking the time to talk to us for the show and for his ongoing efforts joining us on the journey of the long road. Kev, Steve and I, the long road, we were at Woodworm recently doing some recordings for a new EP to be released in spring 2021. And we took a few moments just to have a think about one of the rules we set ourselves, almost by accident, when we started recording together about 3 years ago now, our acoustic rule. So now join the three of us as we discuss its merits, and make sure you hang around right till the end, because Kev shares a shocking confession.
The acoustic rule. How do we cope with that, chaps? You know, is it a burden or is it a gift?
I think it's a gift.
I think it's
I think it's. I think it makes us think harder, and also it gives our sound a real texture.
Yeah.
And it's I was thinking that the other day. It's the texture you get from combining all these acoustic, wind-generated, unplugged sounds.
Wind generated because we're gently edging towards our caveat of the
yeah.
Hammond organ being now, seemingly a vital part of our sound.
You got it in one bit,
and it is. You do need electricity for it to work. Unfortunately,
no, not necessarily. I envisage a day.
Envisage a day when it's solar powered.
I think the great thing about acoustic instruments, and the Hammond therefore fits, is they play up.
Yeah.
They have bad days and good days.
Idiosyncrasy.
Yeah. They have, like playing in this studio because this room's really warm and then that one's cooler, you have to kind of
you've got to let
settle it down and calm it down a bit.
And sometimes you can't rush.
No.
And there's like when we were setting up the Hammond yesterday, there were bits that Stuart was just clearly crossing his fingers on, hoping that let's see if that bit is working properly today. And you just can't recreate that with
It's fascinating
electronics.
that actually with the Hammond, because it really sounds different on any given day.
Yeah, and the differences between some of the drawbars being a millimetre out or an inch out or 2 inches out, as far as I can work out, infinite possibilities of the sorts of sounds you can make.
Yeah.
Absolutely, okay, they'll be minuscule, but so many different possibilities.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing that is interesting about all these acoustic instruments, is that the sound is so generated by the construction of the instrument. Pianos made with different wood or different metal or different sizes have different sounds. The Hammond vibrates with different bits of energy depending on which keys you press and what bits of wood therefore get excited.
Yeah.
Your bass resonates at different frequencies depending on where your hands are on it, which strings are pushed at.
It certainly makes me more drive me to be more inventive, because I can't be lazy and just plug an electric in and let it feed back and do the work for me. It's like what noises can I get out of this piece of wood? And it does drive you to work harder and be more creative, and that can only be a good thing, really.
And the way that Stuart here as well he gets on board with that straight away, and he'll sometimes suggest little ideas like, hey, there was something you did the other day, so try playing it behind the bridge, or I didn't understand the words, and things like that you just, that's the brilliance of the acoustic, of the acoustic rule, if we're going to call it that. That actually it makes you do different things, and it keeps us on a path. I think that's how we found our sound over the last few years of working together, is that we're all sort of putting our efforts into this particular route of music making in the acoustic world. And
absolutely.
And the sound has grown, and
Stuart's on board with that heavy woods thing that we're going for. He can make what we do sound really big. And that's very gratifying.
Well, exactly. And on some of the new stuff we're recording here right now, particularly one of them, Crossroads, is probably the biggest thing we've done in terms of sound.
Indeed.
It's and I love it, and I think that it's an extension of our sound from what we did on, Rattlesnake Reliance, and then the EP's American Wilderness stuff last year.
Yeah, we've been heading towards that, haven't we? It's that journey, and I like that as well. It's quite nice to look back and see the development of the style as we've grown,
But it is. I think it's all about being individual, isn't it, and authentic. And I've got a Fender Stratocaster and I love playing it and stuff like that. But there's something about even this mass-produced Martin. Every one of them has a difference. You know, it feels different, looks different, and therefore you have a different relationship with it. And people get, you know, I have friends who think you can be a bit weird about guitars. Kevin and I have no idea why you think that, but you know, it is a very personal and somewhat intimate relationship, you know.
It is.
With each one, because it's different and it does different things.
I have to confess with you that I slept with my guitar last night, but we're still speaking.
And just as a little treat, an example of the different sort of soul of songs that pops its head up every so often with our writing. One of our songs recorded at the start of 2020 came out on our recent EP release, Out of the Darkness. This song is called Do You, a secular prayer wishing for a peaceful and happy life despite the obstacles that the universe might put up.
Do you stand at the crossroads with the ghost of the night? Do you sleep like a baby when you turn out the light? Do you go to the seashore where the ice cuts the air? From the edge of the cliff top, do you fly? Do you dare? Do you? Cracked window when the last birds are gone? Do you imagine the whole world is breathing as one? Do you open your eyes wide when the day and dust meets? Shiver with pleasure at the touch of cool sheets. Do you? Do you? Do you? To the truth, like a flame in your heart. When the whole earth falls silent, do you know where to start? Like a hurricane of hope, do you let each day in? Do you keep on singing, though you know you can't win?
it for this episode of the Transatlantic Connection Show. Thank you for watching wherever in the world you are. Remember, please subscribe to the channel, like this video if you liked it, and share it with a pal who you think might like it too. If you enjoyed this show, you might enjoy our podcast too. It's called the Vagabond Way Podcast and is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. Just search for the Vagabond Way Podcast and you will find us. Don't forget, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/thevagabondway. Big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Stuart Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you for your ongoing support. Patreon is a great platform that makes it super easy for anyone out there, you, to support content that you love on a monthly basis. It gives you direct access to the people creating the stuff you love, us, hopefully, and you get to play an integral part in shaping the direction of things that we make. So become a vagabonder. That's our name for our supporters on Patreon to help us create music, live performances, books and short stories, our weekly podcast, this YouTube show, and some new things that we're cooking up. As a vagabonder, you can get the recordings and books we make for free, receive exclusive Patreon-only merchandise in the post, get regular behind-the-scenes updates from us, unlock access to exclusive live stream performances and Q&As, and lots more. You can help us create something different, something that entertains, and something that inspires others. So, join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/thevagabondway. So, until next time, keep making those transatlantic connections. Bye for now.